Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are midway through the 2037 season. Respectable year for the Royals, 596 winning percentage, up by 2.5 games in the Central on the Minnesota Twins. And at this point, we do have the best record in the American League, although there are a couple clubs, the Mets and the Diamondbacks over in the NL, that have a better record than we do. Big issue for the Royals is that we recently lost two of our starting pitchers, Kumar Rocker and Ben Borgman, to season-ending and quite honestly, possibly career-ending injuries given their age. Both of them were in their last year of their contracts with us. Looking at our rotation as the month of July begins, we've got Hillman, Chivera, and Lagerwell at the top, which we feel good about. The youngster Marco Estrada now firmly entrenched as our number 4 starter. And then Chris Rutledge has come up from the minors and been relatively unimpressive in his first 2 starts for us. So we feel like we definitely want to add a reliever through the trade market before the month is over and we reach the trade deadline. The issue right now is that there's 2 starters out there that we're kind of intrigued by. The first is Winston Santos. Pretty solid pitching profile. He pitches with the Phillies. The issue is that he's exercised his no-trade clause and doesn't want to come to Kansas City. And then the other pitcher that we are a little bit interested in is Jorge Rodriguez. Actually, that's not who we're interested in. I looked at this a little while ago, and this is kind of weird because you can see we're on July 1st here, and I had pulled up the trade block before I had shut down OOTP a couple hours ago, and there was another pitcher on it at the time who's not on it right now. So that's kind of interesting. The other pitcher who I was potentially interested in, the reason I didn't go for him is that he's really a replacement level type arm, and they were willing to take just about anything for him, like literally a half a star prospect. He was making about $6 or $7 million this coming season. So yeah, I don't know who it was, but he has disappeared from the trade block. Anyways, they would take, basically nothing for him, but I just didn't feel like he was going to be a potential difference maker. So the hope is that there's a few more players who get added to the trade block over the next couple of weeks as teams fall out of contention. And then obviously in a perfect world, we wouldn't mind if I could look at what I want to look at, we wouldn't mind if Winston Santos, maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now decides that he's willing to drop the trade, the no trade clause, and potentially come and join our team. Actually, it could be. All right, there we go. I'd somehow clicked on a situation where we were looking at the OOTP Scouting Association accuracy, and I saw that they were all really low, so I don't know how I clicked on that. But now we're back to looking at Travis Lee, and I think the pitcher that I was thinking about is Christian Hernandez, exactly. Profile doesn't look that bad, but it's certainly been a below-average pitcher over the course of his career. As I mentioned, though, if we were to trade for him, you can see they'll take anything for him. So we can get him for practically nothing. He's making $8.8 million this coming season. If there's nobody better available 3 or 4 weeks from now and he's still on the block, we may make the trade just to bolster kind of the back end of our pitching staff and give us a little insurance if we have injuries. But given the amount of money that we've got left to take on contracts right now, probably hoping for somebody a little better than him. And we did get the international amateur free agent that we made an offer to at the end of the last episode sign. Luis Gonzalez just joined the team, 16-year-old corner outfielder. Looks like he could be a pretty decent power hitter for us if he completely develops down the line. So good to have him on board. And we're at the All-Star break, so let's check out how many Royals made the All-Star team. Eddie Chavera, starting pitcher, 9-1 record, 2.89 ERA over 118 and a third innings. Makes an All-Star team for the first time in his career here in 2037. And he's going to be joined in the bullpen by Kyle Smith. You may remember this is the reliever that we got from the Braves for Mike McNeil in the offseason. Brilliant 1.41 ERA with 59 strikeouts over 51 innings pitched. And third Royal pitcher to make the All-Star team, Santiago Suarez, our closer. 198 ERA over 41 innings pitched, 1-3 record with 23 saves. So 3 pitchers make the All-Star team for the Royals. Looking at the position players, Jonathan Ojeda, who is off to a really brilliant start in his career. 24 homers and 63 runs driven in. The young first baseman, now a 2-time All-Star. And then besides him, 2 other position players. Victor Avellar, former Rookie of the Year for us, now named an All-Star for the first time, hitting just .245, but does have 19 homers with 47 runs driven in. And last but certainly not least, Alex Vasquez, having a resurgent season, .316 batting average, 27 homers and 74 ribbies with a 3.4 WAR. He, is playing well enough that you would think he could potentially be in the mix for a MVP award this season if the fact that he's not that great defensively doesn't just hold down his WAR compared to more versatile offensive players. So 3 All-Stars from the pitching staff and 3 All-Stars from the everyday players for the Kansas City Royals here in 2037. And we've made it to July 11th and the player draft for amateurs, first-year players. The Royals, as has become our custom, are at the end of the first round. So there's going to be a lot of players gone by the time we get to make the 34th pick in the draft. Did some scouting, and you can see there's a fair amount of talent in the draft this year. Generally, what I focus on is kind of players who are 3-star and above, and between pitchers and batters, I think there's close to 90 players who kind of meet that criteria, including Elijah Wood. Frodo is an 18-year-old starting pitcher who's probably going to go in the 2nd or 3rd round. So we will go ahead and auto-draft until our pick, and we will see what scouting director Travis Lee recommends. He recommends we go after a player with a nice nickname, Ed Hammerhead Vasquez, left-handed starting pitcher, looking for $8 million, so looking for way above slot. You can see he's one of the top prospects out there, at least according to the star ratings. And Hammerhead certainly looks interesting. He's durable, just turned 18, left-hander as we talked about. Potentially has 4 pitches, although questionable whether that curveball is really going to be major league quality, but looks like he's going to have a brilliant changeup if it develops, a solid splitter and a solid cutter. So he could have really impressive stuff, could have pretty good movement and pretty good control. We've got very high scouting accuracy on him, although we were looking for an updated report that we just didn't get in time. Looking at the OSA, they're a little more negative on him, but still certainly looks like an interesting prospect. Danny Velez is the other 4.5-star prospect, according to our scout. First baseman, not great defensively. Looks like he could hit for some pretty good power. I definitely am not as interested in him as I am in Vasquez, but going to scout some of these other top prospects too before we make a decision. We'll take a quick look at the 4-star prospects. Justin Briggs, right fielder. Looks like he could be a solid bat. Not much of a defensive outfielder, although he's got a good arm. 19 years old. Signability is impossible. Dave Escobar, center fielder. Like the personality. Bonus demand is low. Looks like he's going to have tons of home run power, but not a great hitter otherwise. Kind of a feast or famine hitter, and he's not going to walk a ton, maybe a little more than average. Ricky Perales, a relief pitcher, and he is a pure reliever. Going to be a 2-pitch guy. I think he could be an effective reliever, but certainly not someone that we would chase in the first round. And then Ozzie Vasquez, another starting pitcher. Love the personality with the high loyalty and the high work ethic, importantly. Also durable. Signability is allegedly impossible. Looks like he's going to be going to Kent State University, staying in Ohio. Another lefty, but he's also potentially an interesting hitter, so that certainly makes him a more interesting prospect because you look at that contact and that power. He looks like he could be a very good hitter, probably one of the best hitters in this draft. He's a corner outfielder, and that's really all he can be. I guess you could play him at first, given that he's 6'6", but his infield ratings are really brutal in terms of that error rating. So I think there are certainly some that would go with the impossible to sign Ozzie Vasquez just because he's got such potential to be a brilliant two-way player. But I really like Hammerhead Vasquez. I'm a sucker for the pitchers. He's also a little easier to sign. He's looking for $8 million as opposed to that impossible number that Ozzie Vasquez is looking for, which usually is around 12, 13, maybe 14 million. The good thing for the Royals this year, you may remember from a couple of episodes ago, that we did put some extra money in our draft budget because we're drafting so late and we don't have any compensatory picks this year. Draft slot amounts are only about $6 million, so we've got about $6 million surplus in the budget, and then potentially might be able to use some of the free agent money if ownership is feeling charitable at the moment that we need it. But we certainly have the ability to overpay for Hammerhead. You can see he's about $4.7 million above slot if we give him what he's looking for. So given that we've got $6 million surplus, having the money to sign the Hammerhead should not be an issue. So we are going to go ahead and we're not even going to mess around. We're just going to meet his demand because we want to get him into our farm system as soon as possible. And auto drafting until our next pick. And you can see 3 of the players that are still out there, including Ozzie Vasquez. Nobody wants to touch him because of his impossible signability. We don't have enough money to sign him budgeted away in the money that we put away for signing draftees. But if we don't take on a ton of salary before the trade deadline, and if ownership is feeling charitable with us, there is a chance that there's enough money in the system that we could, potentially get him signed for the 12 or 13 million dollars, whatever he is actually looking for. So it's tempting to shoot our shot with Mr. Vasquez, given that he's there in the second round. I mentioned Perales is a reliever. We're not going to take him. And Justin Briggs, he's a decent corner outfielder. Not a bad player to be getting at the second round, but his signing is also impossible. I think we're going to shoot our shot with Ozzie Vasquez. I think he's probably going to be a player who ends up an everyday player. If that changeup doesn't develop, he's a 2-pitch pitcher. and he's likely a solid reliever. But you look at those batting ratings, and he could be a pretty interesting bat to have in the lineup. Probably won't get him signed, in which case we'll just get an extra pick next year to make up for it. But we are going to take a shot on Ozzie Vasquez here in the second round. Draft him. And moving ahead to the third round, Travis Lee recommends we now go after Ricky Perales, the reliever. We're going to spend a little time looking at some of the other players that are out there. Another reliever, Jorge Medina. Could be a fine major league reliever, nothing that exciting. Ethan Polk, similar. Nice personality. Could be a nice major league reliever. And then Sam Robinson, another good personality. Looks like he could be a decent reliever. Might give up a few home runs. Catcher Sal Atler is out there. Looks like an average defensive catcher with a probably slightly below average bat if everything develops, so he's not all that exciting. You know, Perales in the third round, going to have a plus fastball and a plus splitter. I'm going to do a little bit of just kind of digging through the potential ratings for the various players and see if maybe there's some hidden gem out there that we haven't come across yet. You know, Justin Briggs would certainly stand out, but we've talked about he's impossible to sign. We've already got one impossible to sign player that we've drafted this year, so I think trying to sign a second would be particularly ambitious and probably not all that realistic. I'm not really all that excited about Perales, but we are at the end of the third round. If we can get a player who's going to be a decent major league reliever at this point, happy to bring him on board. So we'll go ahead and offer him slot and continue on with the draft. Fourth round recommendation, Jorge Vega, high school starting pitcher. It's funny, I had actually looked at him when I wasn't recording last round and was a little intrigued by him. Really like the movement and control. His stuff is just not going to be that great. Even if his fastball and slider completely develop, he's kind of a guy with 3 average-ish pitches. But the movement and control will help. Obviously the stuff, or I don't know if it's obvious, but I think the stuff is the most important attribute to have. He is potentially so good with his movement and control that maybe that offsets it. Looking at the OSA ratings, they still see his stuff as being a little bit below average, but even better movement and control. For a fourth round pick, definitely willing to try to bring him on board. You can see I'll offer him slot. He's looking for about $1 million over slot. So if we do end up having to sign him at that amount, that kind of probably uses up just about all the surplus that we had put into our draft budget this year. Into the fifth round, and another interesting prospect recommended by Travis Lee, another high school pitcher, Vinny Salinas. Looks like a guy who could have 6 pitches if everything develops. So stuff a little above average, his movement below average, his control about average. But he is durable, and clearly with the stamina that he has and the arsenal of potentially 6 pitches, he could end up being a pretty decent starter. Would obviously prefer that his movement potential is higher. He's another player who's looking for significantly more than slot at this point. We're going to go ahead and offer him slot, and then we'll see how many of these guys we can get signed. Moving on to the sixth round, probably won't sim, well, we'll sim through all these, but probably won't subject you to hearing about many more of them. Mark Daoust, nice personality, but not much of a hitter. third baseman with that arm, but I don't think he's ever going to hit enough to be somebody that you'd want to be playing third base on an everyday basis. Jorge Medina still out there. Not a bad relief prospect. I think we're probably going to go with him. Signability is extremely hard, though. What exactly is Jorge Funky Cole Medina looking for? Just says extremely. Sorry. Just says hard. He's always looking for his slot. Well, we're picking him in the 6th round, so I don't think the slot is going to be much of anything at this point. So we're going to go ahead and pick Jorge Medina in the 6th round. So a lot of pitchers in the draft this year, including one that we may try to turn into an outfielder if we're able to get him signed. So we're going to wait and see what happens with the rest of our players before potentially making an offer to Ozzie Vasquez, see how much money we really have left, and we will probably need to improve the offers to Vega and Salinas to get them signed. Looks like we overshot with Perales. I wasn't paying attention, but he was actually demanding less than slot, and we offered him slot, so that was just sloppy from not paying close attention, but it is what it is at this point. And in a shout out to frequent commenter and longtime watcher, 3/4 Badger, we've now played 10 games in the month of July, given the All-Star break kind of disruption to the schedule. So checking in on the standings, the Royals are 6-4 over our last 10 games. You can see we are up 5 now on the Twins. Still have the best record in the American League, but still very far behind the Diamondbacks and a bit behind the Mets for the best record in baseball. Vasquez is now in a position where he's trying to make a run at a triple crown, second in the league in batting, second in the league in home runs, and first in the league in runs batted in. So it's probably going to take that type of season, a triple crown type season, for somebody like him who doesn't add a lot on defense to win that MVP award that we were talking about not that long ago. So we'll see if Vasquez can continue raking over the rest of the month and hopefully the rest of the year. And we've simmed ahead to July 29th, another 10 games on the books for the Royals, and you can see both the Twins and the Royals 7-3 over their last 10, with 7 wins in a row for the Royals. So still holding on to a 5-game lead on the Twins, and also have a 5-game lead for the best record in the American League at this point. The Mets ahead of us by percentage points, it looks like, in the standings, half a game in the standings, and the Diamondbacks coming back to earth a little bit with a 2-8 record, but they are still 3.5 games ahead of us for the best record in baseball. Vasquez now has the lead in home runs, still second in batting average, and is fallen back to second in runs batted in his quest for a potential triple crown. You can see that even with the great season he's having, though, he's still only third in the American League and 3 runs behind in batter war behind Matty Vela of Boston, who is a great hitter and an Ozzie Smith type of defensive shortstop. So you can see he did win an MVP award 2 seasons ago, perennial Gold Glover and All-Star. Obviously going to be tough to get the MVP away award from him if Boston continues to win the American League East. And now that we're near the end of the month and just a couple days away from the trade deadline, time to figure out how we're going to try to use that money that we have if we want to add on some salary. The other thing that we can do is we've signed everyone except Ozzie Vasquez. Said he's impossible to sign. When we negotiate with him, he needs something significantly over $8.5 million to consider signing. Now we do have budget room of $15.8 million, so I think if we don't bring on a ton of salary and contracts, we can potentially make a really high offer to Ossie Vasquez and see if we can get him signed. That said, we're trying to win 4 world championships in a row, so we are going to make sure that our primary focus is looking at the trade market right now and figuring out if there is anybody who can help us. Clearly adding Fernando Tatis Jr., who is at this point, 7-time most valuable player, would be a huge acquisition, but you can see he's out for the year, another 4 months to recover from that torn UCL. He's going to be 39 by the offseason, and he's going to be a free agent next year. It will be interesting to see if he comes back. I assume he will. Still looks like a pretty solid player. He has just had an insane career. You can see 863 home runs, almost 2,200 runs batted in over the course of his career. Just a monster career, 146.6 WAR, but this is really kind of the first year that has been completely fractured because of injuries for him. I guess since the 2022 season, but we won't talk about that. And taking a look at the starting pitchers, it looks largely like the list that we went through at the start of the month. Winston Santos still would be, potentially the most interesting acquisition. We'll see whether he's willing to waive his no trade. Still not willing to leave Philadelphia for Kansas City, so that is unfortunate. But I guess he likes playing for a team that is 3 games out of the wild card rather than a team that's going for a 4th consecutive World Series championship. I don't know, Winston. Doesn't seem like you want it that bad. And I think there's kind of 3 pitchers we're going to kind of see what would take. Christian Hernandez, we mentioned before. You look at his ratings and you'd think he was an above average pitcher, but certainly over the course of his career, he has been below average in terms of his statistics. And although he spent most of his career with the Phillies, he's also been with the White Sox, Oakland, Pittsburgh, Toronto, St. Louis. So he hasn't played his entire career in Philadelphia. I think we can still get him for practically nothing. Hard to imagine that his price went up. He's kind of a back end of the rotation guy. But normal injury proneness would not be a bad insurance policy. Mario Bustamante, honestly, is kind of similar. Has been a below average pitcher over the course of his career by the numbers. Making only $2.2 million. Going to be a free agent after this season. Have to see what St. Louis is looking for him, but he's in the mix. And then the last picture in the mix is Jun Young Park. He's been the most effective at the major league level. Clearly an above average pitcher over the course of his career when you look at his ERA plus and his FIP minus. Came over from Korea at the age of 31 a few years ago. He won the most outstanding pitcher in Korea a couple of times. The issue with him is that he's wrecked in terms of his injury proneness. And I have a feeling they're still going to want a lot for him. So I don't know that it's going to work. We'll see what they're looking for Park, just at a high level. Park has got a no-trade clause, and he doesn't want to go to Kansas City, so that made it easy. Bustamante, looking for a pretty solid major leaguer or a really good prospect, so the price for Bustamante is high. And then we go back to Christian Hernandez. You may remember the price for him was dirt cheap before, and it still seems that way. We can give them just about anything for Christian Hernandez, so we can easily bring him on board as an insurance policy. it might not be the worst thing to do. Probably lets us get Rutledge out of the rotation for the time being. He has been pitching better, has that ERA down to 4.02. I mean, I like Hillman, Chavera, and Lagerwell for our top three in a playoff series. Marco Estrada, he's 7-4 with a 3.11 ERA, even though he's only in his second year. If he's our fourth starter, I think he gives us a fighting chance. And then potentially bringing Hernandez on board gives us at least a competent, proven major league starter to be our fourth starter in the playoffs if we do end up with an injury to any of those other guys. Would love to bring on somebody who is better. But when you look at the starters that are out there, Park and Santos are better, but neither of them wants to come to Kansas City. So I think at least initially our first move is going to be to bring on Christian Hernandez. And we can get Hernandez for just about nothing. We have to send Kelvin Basaldua to them. You can see he's almost 23 years old. He's never been outside of rookie ball. Clearly not a long-term prospect, and they'll keep 90% of his contract. They just want to save any little amount of money they can by letting him go. Hopefully, he doesn't even make our postseason roster, but I do think he gives us some insurance for the regular season here. You know, we look at where the Royals are right now. In terms of our team statistics, we're second in the league in runs scored, first in the league in runs allowed. You know, the team is pretty well balanced, playing real well. 13-7 here in the month of July in the 20 games that we've played that we've talked about. So he's really just an insurance policy. And we are in a battle for the division, as we've talked about. Normally in most seasons, we've had more than a 5-game lead at the end of July. There have been some great battles that we've had over time, but if we get hit with a bunch of injuries in the pitching staff, at least he gives us a competent arm that should be able to go out there and give us a quality start more often than not, which hopefully with our offense will mean that we can win more games than he starts than we lose. In taking a look at our team, Chris Rutledge, who, as we talked about, has been better, 4.02 ERA over 31 1/3 innings pitched, although his record is only 1-4 as a starter. But he's actually going to be the one who we send down to Omaha to make room on the big club for Christian Hernandez. And taking a look at what Bobby Crosby wants to do with the staff now, Hernandez actually slots in his mind ahead of both Lagerwell and Estrada. So, as I mentioned, he has been below average when you kind of look at his career stats. And it's not just that he's played the most of his career in Philadelphia, because his ERA plus for his career and his FIP minus for his career are both actually better in Philadelphia than over the course of his career. So, interesting pitcher. He looks really good on paper or on the computer screen, the virtual paper of 2022. But he hasn't been all that great over the course of his career. But maybe we can unlock something from him playing in Kauffman Stadium over the next couple of months. And the nice thing about bringing him on board when the Phillies were going to retain most of his contract is that we've still got tons of money. So that still does give us the opportunity to just make a crazy offer to Ozzie Vasquez and potentially bring him on board as a second-round pick who absolutely has first-round talent. But we're still going to spend a little bit of time before finishing up the month just kind of perusing anyone else on the trade block who might be able to help us. I think we've gotten the starter that we're going to get. We'll check in on Santos again 2 days from now. I'm assuming he still will not be willing to waive his no-trade clause. Khalil Watson would be, I guess, a help for us. He's wrecked physically, so as much fear as we have about Laziosi and Flores suffering injuries, I don't think he'd help us with that. He probably would be a starter for us, but I don't think he's a huge upgrade. We don't need outfielders. Alex Contreras is solid. If there was a real good infielder who could play somewhere besides first base, we would go after him, or could go after them. But we're just so deep at some of those positions that I don't really think that there's anything we want to do. As I mentioned, it would be awesome to bring on Tatis Jr. if he was actually going to be able to play again this season, but that is not the case. Do we bring on a top-end reliever? I'll take a look at these guys, see if there's anyone who really stands out as a absolute difference maker. Our old buddy Nomar Medina signed with the Dodgers. They're looking to move on from him. He's having another solid year, and he's been pretty successful in the couple years that he was with us. Could certainly add that left-handed arm out of the pen. Yeah, there's a bunch of relievers out there. They're kind of a dime a dozen, even at the top end of the market. Colby White has had a really nice career. 126 ERA plus, 82 FIP minus. But I like our pitching staff, as we talked about. It's allowed the fewest runs in the American League. And we just had to send down a pretty good pitcher to make room for Hernandez. Looking at our bullpen, I guess could we upgrade from Bob Williams? Yeah, some of those guys would be an upgrade from Bob Williams. He's out of option years, so we'd have to trade Bob Williams away to bring one of them on board. But Alex Simmons, the youngster, has been really good with 37 strikeouts and a 2.93 ERA over 27 and 2/3 innings for us. Certainly want to see what he can do. Omar Ganoa's been better. Got his ERA down to 4.82. Still has only pitched 18 and 2/3 innings as a left-handed specialist, but after getting rocked early and often in the beginning of the season, he's been more effective recently. I don't think there's anything else for us to do in the trade market. Again, I'll see if we could trade Bob Williams for one of those relievers who's better than him. Maybe we do that. I don't know if that'll be what they're looking for, though. And if you were looking closely before, you would notice that I was only searching for the relief pitchers, so I had missed out on all the closers, and there is some kind of top-ish end talent among the closers, which gives us a few other options. At the top end of the market is Yusriel Bernay, 30-year-old. You can see really good stuff, good movement plus control. You look at his ratings with that excellent fastball, good forkball, and then two other decent pitches. He looks like he should be a real good pitcher. And honestly, over the course of his major league career, his ERA plus suggests he's about average. His FIP minus does suggest that he's better than average. His 4.05 Sierra, though, says, maybe a little better than average. But I think he would certainly be an upgrade over Bob Williams in the pen if we're able to bring him on board. Question is what the Dodgers are looking for him. There's a lot of guys that they take, but Bob Williams is not among them, unfortunately. Wonder what would happen if we added Williams into the trade, though. Is Williams good enough that they would just take some replacement level minor leaguer with him? Opens up things a little bit, but they're still looking for pretty solid prospects for him. So don't know what to do. And we have been able to pull together a trade centered around Bob Williams for Yisrael Bernay, who is a better pitcher this year. And he's also arbitration eligible next year, as opposed to Williams, who is going to be a free agent that we're unlikely to re-sign. We do have to throw in another corner outfielder, Jose Cuevas. Looks like he could be a bit above average in terms of his bat, but he's almost 22 years old and he's never played above rookie ball. Now, granted, he's playing well there this year. We probably should send him up to Single A and see how he can do there. Not the best personality in the world for the clubhouse. So I think this is a trade on the margin that's going to make us better, to bring on Bernay into our bullpen and let Williams go. So we are going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans not happy since Bob Williams was popular. You can see our fan interest is down to 96 now. It had been over 100 for most of the last several seasons. So I guess we have made some moves that have not made the fans really excited. But I think we're a better team to try to win this year with Bernay. Didn't cost us a ton of money. And I think Bernay gives us quality that we didn't have with Williams. And I think that Hernandez gives us a nice insurance policy if we have some injuries. So that's probably it for what we're going to do. We will check in at the end of the month, which granted is only 2 days away, on those two starters who were unwilling to waive their no-trade clauses to join us. But I tend to think the answer is going to be the same on Friday as it is today on Wednesday. So one final check-in here on the last day of the month as far as the trade block. Taking a look at the starters. Winston Santos still out there. And Winston Santos still wants no part of the Royals. Jun Young Park still out there. And Jun Young Park still wants no part of the Royals. So that does mean that we're going to throw some money at Ozzie Vasquez. Second round pick. Looks like he could be a decent pitching prospect. But we're most intrigued by the fact that I think he could be an exceptional batting prospect as well. So a very interesting player who is supposedly impossible for us to sign. Bonus significantly over $8.5 million to get him signed. We've got budget room of $15.264 million. We're going to offer him $11,250,000. So that's about 2.75, or exactly 2.75 million above the 8.5 he's looking for. I would think that that would be significant. But we're going to submit that offer to him, and we'll find out next month what he thinks about it. But we're going to sim ahead today past the trade deadline and head into August and finish up this episode. And looking at the standings here on August 1st, still just a 5-game lead for the Royals over the Twins. 67-44 record, best record in the American League. Up 5 on the Twins, not just for the division, but for the best record in the American League. Still chasing the Mets and the Diamondbacks for the best record in baseball, so for the first time in several years. We may not guarantee home field advantage throughout the playoffs, but hopefully we can still win the Central and have the best record in the American League to at least put ourselves in the best position possible to get to the World Series. Vasquez still fighting for a triple crown. .330 average, second in the league. 35 homers, leads the league. and 84 runs batted in his second, leads the league in OPS. Javi Medina had a 17-game hitting streak earlier in the year. Eddie Chavera at 2.82 and Caleb Lagerwell at 2.98, first and third in the American League in earned run average. And Eddie Chavera is third in the league in pitcher WAR. So it's been a really nice year for the Royals so far. Hopefully we can make it back into the playoffs and chase after that fourth championship in a row. And we'll see how the last couple months of the season go in our next episode. Other than the two big injuries, which I don't want to minimize, because between Borgman and Kumar Rocker, that's almost $40 million of starting/relief pitchers that we've lost this year. But other than those guys, the team has been pretty healthy this season. I don't want to jinx us as we're heading into August, but if the team stays healthy, I think we're going to make a good run at it. And we will find out how that goes in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.